I'm asking this of everyone, Richard. What do you reckon's going to happen in, 35 minutes' time?
I think it's going to be blooming tight. That's what I think. I've seen all the votes moving around at the various different stages. I've spoken to some colleagues who voted for multiple different people, different person every round. So I have no idea what's going to happen. I really hope, though, that Rishi's at a bit of a commanding lead up to this point. I hope he gets over the line. I think he's the best person for the job. That's why I've backed him all the way. And we'll just have to see what happens for the second place candidate.
Well, why are you backing him? Because, there's lots of your fellow MPs, lots of our viewers, lots of Conservative members who may feel that he was part of the ultimate downfall of Boris Johnson and that they couldn't support him for that reason.
No, I think what we've got to do now is look to the future. I mean, look, also, Rishi was with me on Boris's leadership campaign. Now, I was on Boris's leadership campaign when he was 6-1, right? And then when Rishi and others joined, just before that final going out to the members, he was 6-1 on. So Rishi was a big part of that. Rishi's been with Boris for a long time. I think, in the end, Boris said himself that the parliamentary party broadly weren't supporting him anymore. So, and I think in those circumstances, I think it's really important we have the best candidates putting their names forwards. And I think Rishi's clearly one of those. He's clearly one of those with my colleagues as well. And I think we've actually got a final three there, all of whom I would be happy to see as Prime Minister. But the person I genuinely think is best placed to not just win seats like mine, but win seats across the country, stop Labour and the Lib Dems, probably propped up by the SNP, getting into government after the next election, and also really start to drive forwards on that delivery of that levelling up agenda more broadly. I genuinely think that person is Rishi Sunak.
But isn't the problem, though, Richard, that you say you're happy for any of the three candidates to be leader, but there's this massive fundamental divide. Your candidate, Rishi Sunak, is saying if Liz Truss becomes Chancellor, she's going to tell us fairy tales, she's going to cut tax irresponsibly.
I think you mean Prime Minister.
Sorry, if becomes Prime Minister, you couldn't support that, could you? Could Rishi Sunak support that agenda when he's so publicly opposed to it and thinks it's irresponsible for the country? I
think as there is a proper choice there as well, I think, in this contest. And Rishi has made clear what he wants to do is get inflation down first. So many of my constituents have spoken to me about issues their families faced in the early 90s when interest rates had to rise because of inflation, and then in the 70s when they were really under pressure because of those inflationary spirals. Mrs Thatcher came in, got those inflation numbers down, and it's only after doing that we can control prices, it can give tax cuts, because if you give tax cuts when inflation's running high, people don't notice them because they're swept up in rising prices. We've got to get the balance there first. I think there are different approaches to this, but I know the approach that I prefer is that being put forward by the Chancellor.
But that's my point. I mean, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but you get my point that you think the path Liz Truss would take is wrong. We all know that. I get collective responsibility, but how can you then support, if she wins, if she were to win, how would you support that, given that you think that's wrong for the country?
No, I think the best path is the one that Rishi's taking. That's the path that I prefer, because I think that's the one that I personally believe in. Liz's, I genuinely think, would be more of a gamble, which is why I've not supported it, but I'm backing Rishi's because I think it's a proper balanced approach. He's led the country through some really tough times. Neither, if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, would have said we should have to pump 400 billion into the economy and protect 11 million jobs, 1.5 million businesses through COVID. But we have done that because it was the right thing to do at the time. The right thing to do during this Ukraine crisis has been to help people with those spikes in costs of oil and gas and foodstuffs over the last few months and then going into later this year. And we've had to take some tough calls, but I think Rishi's done it in the responsible way, and that's why I'm backing him at the moment.